really the majority of the people I have talked to, they are really, really hopeful that this is the beginning of the end of this regime that we have had for 30 years. People are really, really expecting that they can get their jobs back. PDVSA, which is our oil company, really right after the attack, there were already military officers detaining people if you had even a message on WhatsApp where you were demonstrating any kind of support to the U.S. military intervention.
I'm wondering, like, how we're going to have an episode coming up very soon where we do a roundtable discussion about a lot of different topics. One of our core team members here, Angel Ronaldo Cifuentes, is also Venezuelan. He's a journalist who lives here in Athens, and he's going to be on the show. And to your conversation point about Venezuelans being able to speak themselves, when I told him about the show, he said, "Oh, I have plenty to say." So I'm really looking forward to talking with him about what this looks like from the ground level. It seems as if this current Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is going to be able to remain in power, perhaps as long as she remains in good graces of Trump. But perhaps her brother Jorge, who's the head of the parliament, has something to say about whether her 90-day temporary interim status will be extended. I'm wondering what can happen over the course if, for instance, a major movement inside the parliament says, no, we don't want this government, any piece of this government to remain. What do you think the political reality would look like? Will we return back to a previous election cycle where you have a lot of different players on the opposition side? It's not necessarily just who ends up facing Maduro in the last election. Would Machado return? Would Guaido return? Would these other characters and major players in opposition, do you think, would they seize the opportunity to try to reclaim the leadership that they were fighting for in the previous cycles?
Yeah. So first, to your first point, we have to remember that the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, and her brother, and all the structure that is in place at the moment in Venezuela is as illegitimate as Maduro. So the assembly can say whatever they want, but they are as illegitimate and as Maduro himself. So definitely, the opposition has always demonstrated that they are ready to take power and that they are, they have fought for democracy back in the country. And it's been really surprising to see, first Trump to dismiss Maria Corina Machado's leadership. As he has done it, or as he did it, the first press conference that he held, he said that Machado didn't have the support, enough support of Venezuelan people, which was really upsetting and really disappointing for Venezuelans because, I even was covering the elections in Venezuela in 2024. And I am a witness of how this woman worked so hard to put in place a system that managed to demonstrate that the government reached the elections by digitalizing 80% of the actas, the tally sheets from the elections. And, the opposition went to elections that were not fair, were not free at all, under a system that was definitely on the advantage of the government. And still, she managed to bring this hope and this inspiration back to so many Venezuelans that didn't want to vote not just within the country, but many Venezuelans that I met on a flight from Berlin to Caracas were traveling to Venezuela only because they wanted to vote. And I think that is remarkable to think of the amount of the level of commitment the Venezuelans have given to the country. You know, the flying hours, spending so much money as well on a flight to be able to be part of this moment back in 2024.
And
So
she wasn't even on the ballot because they basically said that she's guilty of treason and that she's violated the Constitution for foreign intervention simply because she's fighting for democracy and looking to the international community through digital platforms to say this guy has to go, and then they they label her treasonous. It's like it's insane. And then knowing that she is the real force to get people to actually show up and knock him out from an actual legal vote that's recognized, that is not recognized internationally, with Maduro saying that he won overwhelmingly, and no one in the international community has acknowledged any of the elections that he's ever won. All of them have been rejected by international, but there's 14 years of his rule.
yeah, I mean, she was banned from any kind of power political position for like 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so yeah, I mean, she like she even put herself she brought herself down to give the opportunity to this other politician, Edmundo González Urrutia, who is now the elect president from the 2024 elections. And this man was really not known by anyone in the country, and in a campaign that lasted like 2 months before the elections, was like really the government thought this is impossible that they can win, right? But the discontent of the Venezuelans is it's like so high that those elections were lost by landslide with 670 30%.
Wow.
And this is proved, which I think it is remarkable. It is important to understand at the moment. But yeah, back to your question. I think the opposition is really taking their steps to be able to be part of this transition. I think this is going to happen with definitely the support of the United States, because, well, Trump has also said that he would like to have Maria Corina as part of this transition, but as like at the first moment that Maduro is taken down, we thought, okay, now what's going to happen is that Maria Corina or Edmundo González is going to come back, right? But I think it's not only about. I think the strategy here is about keeping some kind of order in the country, and that's why this kind of democratic transition takes time, and also takes requires to have some kind of leadership from the other party, so I think the opinion of many Venezuelans is that we don't want to see any part of this government on a next election, for example. But I do believe that if we want this to develop in a peaceful and the most like easy way, it will take to have an election where members of both parties will have to show up, and we will have to go to elections again. I think according to our constitution, that's what we must do as well. Again, it's difficult to assess because nothing what is in place now is legitimate. And if we go back to the constitution, yes, when the president is not there, 90 days later, you have to have an election. The vice president becomes the acting president in the meantime. And what we are hoping is that we can definitely have elections that can be transparent and fair and with international observers, and they can be recognized as legitimate. I don't think that, and I mean, I think with the United States being there, that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like essentially you have 20, almost 30 straight years of like this type of government in power since Chavez comes in with the Bolivian revolution. Like, I mean, and then you have this like kind of shift from him to Maduro as the vice president at the time, and he gets named as the heir apparent. And now here you have Delcy as the forced apparent heir, but may be continuing identically the same types of policies that Maduro destroyed the economy and destroyed the country. He didn't receive a country in good condition from Chavez as he left. It's interesting, though, that the current reality is very similar to the reality that Chavez rode as a wave to get into office in 98. He was able to play off of this like discontent, this need to move on from the cronyism and the corruption of 40 years after the dictatorship ends in 58. You have 40 years of essentially democracy, but it doesn't feel like that for the people, and it's very inequitable. But now you have everything gets nationalized. You have a whole new version of corruption and destruction of the economy, and hyperinflation. It's insane when you think about when people complain about inflation in America or the UK and everyone's freaking out over a percentage point and it flips elections. I'm like, just check out Venezuela, check out Argentina, check out Zimbabwe or something. It's like, get a gut check on really what's going on. I wonder like how the average Venezuelan right now is really how split perhaps, and this is the way the whole world is now seen, is that like we are divided, but I feel like there are a lot of forces that are dividing us versus us already being divided. So I'm curious about, just from the Venezuelan population in America, we saw a lot of celebration in South Florida and Miami. We saw a lot of confusion in the Midwest. People in New York were also both excited and then also very fearful of what's happening to their family members at home. So from a political standpoint, does anybody right now have faith that this is going to be a major turning point for something better? Or do you feel that everyone is kind of polarized to the point where we're just going to kind of grind to some sort of stagnant halt politically?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think really the majority of the people I have talked to, they are really, really hopeful that this is the beginning of the end of this regime that we have had for 30 years. And yeah, really a lot of hope that with the US investment as well into the oil industry, it will create new jobs for Venezuelans, especially back to the 80s and 70s when our oil industry was a boom, right? So I've seen also like reports where people are really expecting that they can get their jobs back. PDVSA, which is our oil company, and yeah, I think in terms of celebration, we didn't really see that inside Venezuela, which is really crazy to think, because I think most of the people always thought that when this regime will fall. We are gonna celebrate. We're gonna party. Like that's gonna be the most amazing night we have ever had, and that didn't happen. That didn't happen for the vast majority of Venezuelans in Venezuela, because of fear, because of repression. I mean, really, right after the attack, there were already military officers detaining people if you had even a message on WhatsApp where you were demonstrating any kind of support to the U.S. military intervention. And that was, again, the same experience we had after the elections were reached, when people were to protest, and we had 2,000 prisoners in a matter of 4 or 3 days. 2,000 prisoners because they were protesting against the elections, but not even. There are cases of people that were just standing by a protest, and they were taken because they were observing the protest, using their right as an observer or documenting something. So, and it's the same for journalists after the military attack. Journalists have been imprisoned for doing their jobs. So inside, on the ground, I can tell that there is still fear and confusion about how this is all gonna help the country. But at the same time, there is hope that really this is the beginning. I think no one is expecting to see things changing overnight, but there is really a lot of hope that with the new changes and the new developments. I mean, just yesterday the United States had announced that there are flights now, that there will be flights flying from the United States directly to Venezuela, which is also unprecedented. We haven't had that for more than 9 years, and that is also going to be a new income for the country, which again is it's a very complex assessment, because on one hand it's like, oh my gosh, this is so good, like a lot of Venezuelans are going to be able to fly, to go and visit their families, to have these reunions with people they maybe haven't seen in such a long time. But at the same time, you think, okay, this is all happening while the same structure is in place. So this actually supporting some kind of order in the country, while the same regime nothing has changed politically, So, it is a very complex and confusing moment for a lot of Venezuelans again. And yeah, again, like I think this celebration that we were hoping to have didn't happen at all. It's really, for me, it has been cathartic to see Maduro in a prison, in court in New York. It's been a dream, like to see a man that has stolen elections, that has it is committed countless violations of human rights, killed Venezuelans on the streets in our protests in 2017 and 2014, and several protests that I lived and that I covered as a journalist while I was there. So it is really amazing to see, but at the same time it's bittersweet, because you think of how this happened and how we got here. And it feels that, that now we have the U.S. running the country, whatever that means for us, and the question of how long this is going to stay like that, right? But I really go back to the resilience and to the power of the Venezuelan people. And I think that the Venezuelan people has always demonstrated that they want democracy, and that they have a voice and they have power. So I really believe that resistance is going to continue, and that the worst has passed. That's my hope. Yeah.